Hello and welcome back. Today we're building the Sierra Cosworth 4x4 rally car in 1/24th scale from D.Modelkits. This is a brand new kit and their first ever model, and one that I was really looking forward to release. This is the 1992 Rallye de Portugal version. As with any kit, the first thing to do is to remove any mould seams. Then when it comes to these door handles shouldn't be black, they should actually be white, so you can put them in here before painting the whole bodywork. If you wanted to leave them black, then yeah, you could. There's then these two vents which go onto the roof. Unfortunately you can't put them in open, but at least the photo etch means that is quite a nice little bit of detail. There's some very small lines on the roof to show you exactly where they need to go, and they were stuck into place using some super glue. Here I'm just using a metal file to remove the burrs from the edges. And there they both are. Make sure to put these on before painting them, as it needs to be body colour. Here I am, starting with some Halford's white primer. This is in my new spray booth, which I got from Kent Models. Just giving it mist coats to start with before building up, and also to make sure that I get on top of that photo etch part. And once I'd let that cure for a few hours, I'm now using TS26 from Tamiya. This is pure white. Starting with mist coats, before moving on to heavier layers. It was then masked, and I used some TS15 blue from Tamiya to do the sections at the bottom of the doors. There are decals for this, but I wanted to make sure that the colour matched that on the bumpers, so I decided to paint it. Now then, the decal sheet is quite extensive. A good tip is to make sure that you remove the numbers whilst cutting them out, as I found that they can easily get stuck onto the other decals. I put down some micro set, and then this red decal goes on top of the door trim. Made sure that it was in the right position, and then put some UMP strong decal solution over the top, and then gave it a little bit of a blast with a hairdryer on a medium setting to help them adhere as best as possible. Then got these rubber strips on the roof. Again, like the door ones, these could be painted, but I just think they look a lot neater like this. I'm using a brand new craft blade and then a wet cotton bud to help these red decals go around the edges of the doors. And then you've got larger decals which go on next. This is the Mobile 1 Autoglass car glass sponsored version. The 1991 version is sponsored by Q8 Oils. I'm building the Mekibiacion version, which has Autoglass sponsorship. If you build the Delacour version, it is Carglass, which is what the company was called in France. Now I do make a slight mistake here. These door cards should have the A on the left hand side, so this one should have gone on the other side of the car, but there's nothing I could have done about that, as I only realised once they'd both gone on. The decals I found don't need to be in the water for very long to remove from the backing. Once I put all those ones down on the side, I then put down the number 7 for Biacion's car. If you're not happy with this livery, have a look online, as many alternative liveries have now been released for this Sierra kit. With all of these decals, I put down some micro set first, and if they were in a difficult area, I may have used some UMP strong decal solution. Also used a wet cotton bud to roll over them and help them settle down as best as possible. This Autoglass decal on the back also has the Ford badge logo. It's a bit raised in areas, especially on the left here. And some of the roof decals are slightly different depending on whether you're building Delacour or Biasion's car, so have a look in the instructions. Now all four wheels are the same size, but you may want to drill into the front ones to add these wheel covers, and then you add the decals over the top. As you can see here, they didn't always use the wheel covers, so I'm choosing to go without in this case. Again, using micro set and then a bit of UMP strong decal solution. Then when it came to the suspension, these parts were painted silver, and then I used this red Sharpie to do the coils. I painted the other engine parts according to the instructions, and these all clip into place really nicely. The undercarriage is really detailed, though a lot of it will be hidden by skid plates. You could always leave those off if you wanted to expose these mechanical parts. What I like is there's lots of logical holes which you can then add glue to from the other side. I suggest building up the front steering and then sliding this controlling arm through to fit it into place. I found doing it earlier than this just didn't stay in place, but it was quite secure after this and doesn't need glue so that you can steer both wheels. For much of the brush painting I used Revell aqua paints. These are useful because they can be thinned down just with water. And as they're acrylics, they dry fairly quickly. There's various other parts that need to be clipped into place. And some parts on the underside need to be in blue or red. Some of these parts are very fine, so using Tamiya extra thin cement as I am here is really useful. Now for the discs, these were painted in silver, and then you've got the photo etch parts here. Used a small amount of super glue to fit these into place, once I'd painted the calipers in iron. The polycaps are quite large, but they're all the same size. These go in like so. Be very careful when attaching these, as you don't want to damage any of the delicate suspension parts. Looks pretty good if you ask me. However, I will give this a black pin wash using some Tamiya black panel line accent, as well as other mechanical places, just to add a bit of depth, shading, and perhaps a bit of oil staining. I've then got a bit of light grey panel line accent, which I'll use on here, as there are small screw heads, and the grey will make it look more realistic. Now the wheel has got 4 wheel nuts, and the centre, which all are being painted in Revell steel. It's very difficult to do this accurately though, so I recommend also getting some black panel liner and to fill in those spaces to make it look more realistic. Any excess can be cleared up using a cotton bud. All the tyres are exactly the same. Make sure you get the side with the larger sidewall on the outside so that you can put your Michelin decals on later on. Very gently, you can give them a small twist to help them on. You may even want to use a small amount of washing up liquid or hand soap to help them slip into place. There's the decals. Again, I used some UMP strong decal solution to help those adhere as best as possible. Now for this footplate here, I decided rather than painting it silver, I'd use some aluminium tape. This can be bought fairly cheaply online. It's for plumbers' use. Now push it into place, give it a little trim around the outside and fold over the edges. And then I use the end of a cocktail stick to open up the holes in that. Let me know what you think of this idea in the comments down below. Now the interior is mainly gloss white like the exterior, but there are areas that need to be semi-gloss black, like this central console place. Also this footplate here on the driver's side, so I've masked around the outside of that to try and keep it as neat as possible. Not perfect, but okay I think. Then the footplate goes on this side, and there's a driver footplate on the other side, which I also did in metal. This box at the back is in Revell ochre. Then there's a few parts like these tanks that need to be sort of satin white, and then you've got gear sticks and handbrakes and so on. The interior detail is really good. I think this kit has got more parts on the interior than some car kits have in the entire box. Decided to add these decals to the extinguishers, and then because I don't really like painting the silver bands around it, I cut some very thin strips of plumber's aluminium tape and used those instead. I think this looks a lot more realistic and also just neater than the job I would do. You've got the large extinguisher which goes behind the co-driver's seat, and then there's a smaller one which goes just in front of the driver. Pretty happy with that. This small part here has got a red switch which needs to be glued into place. And then you've got these two parts which go in the back, including this first aid kit. This was painted in Tamiya Park Green, which matches the decal pretty well in my opinion. Roll cage needs to be painted in white, matte red, semi-gloss black and matte black in different places, so look carefully at the instructions to get it all right. And then Tamiya extra thin cement glues it together quite nice and securely. So I've got this part to set as best as possible before then putting it into the car. This will also give me something to tie the seatbelts to later on. There are so many clips and joins for this, it all goes together very well. The seats have been done in matte black, and then you've got this Kevlar decal which goes onto the back. Like many of these decals, it's slightly too big, so you will get folds in places, so use a good softening solution. I'm using UMP Strong, and that should help you get it as smooth as possible. Pretty happy with that. And then you've got a couple of decals saying Recaro on the front, behind the head and the legs. The instructions have recommended lengths for the seat belts. You're given this 2mm width ribbon. However, you're given far more than you need, so I would suggest cutting them slightly longer. And then you've also got more photo etch buckles than you need, which is really useful, as they're the kind of things that can be lost really easily. Here I'm using just a little bit of super glue to glue the buckles into place on the belt, like so. And then they thread through into place. However, don't fit those yet, because there are some photo etch parts which need to go onto the sides of the seat to represent where these would be stuck into place on the floor of the car. A wax pencil like this is really useful for moving around small photo etch parts. And then again I'm using a bit of super glue gel to fit the belts into place. And then a bit more super glue gel to glue those down. It's easier to thread the buckles if you leave the photo etch part on the fret like so. However, I've not done that here. There we have it. So I'll thread these into place, find the length that I'm happy with, and then the sabelt decals, you can add them later. If you don't like doing this, the kit does also come with decal seatbelts. Pretty happy with that. There's then some more buckles which need to go behind. Now I'm using some UMP extra strong decal solution, as that helps the sabelt decals adhere as best as possible. If you do this just with water, I find that they don't stick. Alternatively, you could cut out the decal and not put them in water, and then just glue them on. So here you can see these seat belts are quite a bit long at the back, because I gave them a bit of excess. So I thread them around that back bit of the roll cage and then use some super glue gel to glue them into place. and then the other seat goes into place like so. Door cards are done in semi-gloss black, however the middle section here needs to be white, so that was painted first and then masked. Dashboard was done in black, and then I'm using these Posca paint pens to pick out buttons and switches. Really recommend these, try to get them as fine as possible for doing this kind of detail. It doesn't dry instantly as well, so if you do make a mistake you can normally clean it up pretty quickly. I need to get a yellow one, as you can see here. I'm using a cocktail stick instead. Decided to pick out the screw heads on this with the silver pen. And then some really nice details like these little red switches. And then there's a few decals, this one on the co-driver side, and then you've got the instrument dials on the driver side. Pretty happy with that. Let me know what you think in the comments. Pedals go underneath that, and then that glues into place just behind where the gear stick will go. And here is the gear stick. Again, more and more pieces on the interior. Not sure what all of these are, but it's really, really detailed. Again, more interior parts. Once doing this upper section of the roll cage, there are sun visors that go into there. These were done in matte black, and then I added a little bit of silver to show where the metal arm would be. There we are, I think that looks alright. There's then this microphone or antenna or something which goes in here. And there's another part which goes into the door card like so. There are pinholes at the bottom. The most difficult thing here was getting that microphone or antenna or whatever it is around the roll cage. However, it is possible. We now return to the decals, this time for the bumpers. Now these ones actually should have a white stripe underneath them, so I photocopied them and then cut out the shape of the photocopy and then used that and traced over some spare white decal paper that I had here. Cut that out as carefully as possible. I then put down the white decal first and then the red decal over the top of it. The rear red strip I found wasn't exactly the right shape and had to be trimmed in places to go around the corners, so be careful when you're doing that. And then you've got the other sponsor decals which go on afterwards. Some of them actually go slightly over the red and white lines like this one here, so make sure you do those ones first. You've then got a couple of headsets which are nicely painted in silver, white and black, and those glue together really nicely. I'll put them in on the seats. You've got some radiator detail underneath here, and some panel line accent picks out the shading. It's got a side pipe exhaust, which I've already weathered using some Tamiya weathering sets. That glues into the side like so, and a bit of black paint or panel liner like I'm using here will pick out the tips. Helpfully, the kit comes with a full set of window masks. These need to be applied to the outside as it's the window rubbers that you're painting. Make sure to push them down as firmly as possible around the edges. And then in this case I'm using some Revell Aqua Matte Black, but you may want to cover the rest and spray it instead. Then I'd let that cure for a little while, it's then time to peel those off. You aren't given full masks for the front and rear windscreen, so you may need to add some of your own masking tape if you're planning to spray using these. Some of the inside of the window trims do need to be painted black though. And then I'm also doing some silver on the inside of the lights. You've then got this here which goes above the dashboard, and these which go to the either side of the rear windscreen. These were all painted in matte black. Added a little bit of panel line accent to behind the radiator grille, cleaned up any excess before adding the photo etch parts. Now these side markers need to be silver with an orange bulb, and then you've got a small lens which goes on top of those. It's useful these being a separate part as it's much easier to mask. Rather than using the decals, I sprayed these lights here in TS49 bright red. And then the Ford badge goes into the centre of this photo etch grille. It's worth gluing that together first before then joining it up with the rest of the car. Again, the rear wing was painted in Tamiya TS49 bright red. If you choose to add the night stage lights, you can drill into the bonnet, or as I'm doing here, remove the joining parts and use some small neodymium magnets. Read the instructions with these, keep them away from children and electrical goods, things like that. I'm using a little bit of superglue gel and fitted those into place. And then there are some small markings on the underside of the bonnet where the drills would go, and you can use those to help you position the magnets. I do it like this as it helps to make sure the magnets are the right way on. Nice and secure, and then you can do the same with the bumper like so. There we have it. I found that just painting the black circles on these were a little bit difficult. Might actually be useful to have a decal for a job like this. And then the lenses are slightly different, so look at the instructions very carefully. I've used some foam safe superglue to fit all of these. I love how a rally car looks with its full set of lights. I think that's pretty good. Make sure to do this before adding the window, as this goes onto the inside of the glass and it will be very difficult if adding it later. Then it was time to put the bodywork and the interior together. There are some really nice pins at the front and the rear to help keep the bodywork and the chassis all really securely fitted together. Really nice design. Here I'm adding some foam safe superglue, just a little bit around the lip edge of the window. I'd already test fitted it to make sure I was happy. And that's really nice and secure. Now it's important to paint the edge of these windows black, as otherwise you will see the white edge through the lower half and the side of the windows. Should have done this earlier, but I didn't realise. Make sure that you sand off any burrs, and then the fitment of these windows is really, really good. Pretty happy with that. Then once all this is together, you can then add these sort of side skirt parts. These clip just underneath the body, and then I've chosen to use a little bit of aluminium foil for the heat protection here rather than the decal. 3 pinholes for these, so you can add a little bit of poly cement into there to help keep this as secure as possible. There's some tow cable, hooks and things like that which go on the front and the back. Make sure to add these before fitting it to the car, as it will be a lot easier. Got a skid plate which goes underneath the engine. That was done in ochre and aluminium. Just like with the bodywork, you've got some helpful little pinholes to help the bumpers fit into place. It's a good idea to test fit these first and then add some poly cement afterwards. There's small clips on either side to wedge them into place. Again, you've got tow hooks on the front and also photo etch parts for the front bumper. And the fitment is really, really good. Once all those windows were stuck in place nicely, there are then some decals, such as this Mobile 1. And an autoglass one at the front, car glass if it's Delacour's car. Again, just using a bit of UMP strong decal solution to help that adhere as best as possible. There's really clear places for the wipers and the fitment is good, using a little bit of super glue to fit these into place nicely. And there it is with the night stage lights. We've got the wing mirror here, just the one on the driver's side. I looked at these real Cosworth 92 tail lights to best work out how to paint them. Firstly, you've got this black edge on the inside, and then you've got certain bits in red, certain bits in orange, and certain bits clear. The two larger red sections in the middle need to be clear red, and the rest need to be smoke. So I masked that bit that just needs to be red and gave it a few coats, 3 coats of Tamiya smoke spray can. To clip that off, I then gave the edge a little bit of rubber trim using some black Sharpie. There's a helpful slot either side of the number plate to help the tail lights go in nice and securely, but I'm using some foam safe super glue as well. There they're both in, and I'm pretty happy with that. Next you've got the mudguards. These have got some really nice slots in the underside, which means they don't need to be glued to the bodywork at all. I've used super glue gel to fit these into place. Just make sure that you test fit them first, as they may need to be cut down a little bit. Then you've got some photo etch parts on the exterior, which I'm using some foam safe super glue, just a tiny amount. These clips have a small wire which needs to be fed along the panel lines of the car. I'll add some Tamiya black panel line accent later on. I added the Cosworth and Sierra badges on the back and used a little black panel line accent to pick out the details. Then finally we have the aerial on the roof, and there it is, it's finished. So here we are. I think this is a really nice model and I've really enjoyed building it. Now for the Bobe score. For value, this kit comes with so many parts out of the box: seat belts, photo etch parts, chrome stickers, so I'm giving this a 5 out of 5. It was £55 where I got it, and I think that's a good deal. For assembly, you can tell that this kit was really well planned. There are lots of pinholes and places for parts to go. The decals are a little bit challenging in places. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. For accuracy, the slick tyres may not be exactly realistic, but apart from that it's very good. I'm giving it a 5 out of 5. The quality is very high. This is a brand new kit. Some mistakes in the instructions, but they'll get cleared up in time. I'm giving it a 5 out of 5. For legacy, this is by no means the most significant Ford Cosworth rally car, but it was driven by the champion Mickey Biasion. The 91 version was driven by the now owner of M Sport, Malcolm Wilson, and Francois Delacour was one of Ford's most successful rally drivers, so I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. That gives it an excellent 22 out of 25, and what's more, this kit just won the Model Fan Model of the Year, so well done to D.Modelkits. Thanks a lot for watching. This was the rally car which Ford started the 90s with. If you want to see my build of the one that they finished the 90s with, you can watch my Ford Focus build by clicking the link here. Thanks again for watching. Leave a comment down below, hit the like button, and I'll see you soon.